is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Haunting of Hill House. Season 1, Episode 1, Stephen Sees a Ghost. In this episode, I'm going to give this bitch another whirl. And so far, so good. It's helpful, because I've seen many of these actors before now. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Candace for commissioning this episode. So, yeah, I had talked to Candace about this before she commissioned it because I had never finished The Haunting of Hill House. I watched the first 2 episodes at this point 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It was when it first came out. I don't remember how old it is. And I got so confused because so many of the white women looked so similar to one another with their brunette hair. Even the girl who is the nanny in Bly Manor, who's a blonde in that, looks brunette in this. And they all have very, attractive, symmetrical, oval faces. And I swear to God, it was just, I kept being like, wait, which one? Now that I'm rewatching it, it's funny to me that I got so confused because now I can absolutely tell them apart. It's no problem. But the first time around, man, I really was just, and it didn't help having Owen next to me also being like, I don't think that's that one. I think that's the other one. So Candace agreed that since I could literally remember nothing about what I had seen so far, except for the fact that there is a suicide that starts everything off, and that I can't tell the women apart, she was like, you know what, I'm going to commission it, and we'll just have you start as if you're unspoiled. So, Candace says, I felt that way about Dark. I could see that. Dark, they look distinctive enough to me, but I could understand still. I mean, there's just a lot of characters in Dark, and a bunch of versions of every character, so it's really hard with Dark. Ashley says, I didn't realize until I was recently going through the feed that you've done the book for the book club. Do you remember much of it? I remember a fair amount, Ashley. She says, at first I just had to remember them as eldest girl, eldest boy, twin girl, twin boy, brunette boy for so long. Oh, were the 2 youngest meant to be twins? I didn't realize that. I'm not sure if that's explicitly said yet, but good to know. So, the main characters that obviously I'm recalling from Bly Manor are the nanny plays Nell, the youngest, who winds up dead by the end of the episode, but also is a ghost. And of course, his brother Luke, who is an addict, who plays super hot but very shady Scotsman lover in Bly Manor. And I feel like the sister Theodora, who is another character entirely in the book, she is one of the sisters from the flashback of Bly Manor about what happens. I don't remember if the eldest sister or the mother are anybody. But anyway, that's it. Patrick, that's it. He says, am I recalling this incorrectly, or is the eldest girl the same actor for Esme in Twilight? Patrick, that's it. Thank you. Because I kept being like, she must also have been in Bly Manor, but I can't remember who she was. That's what I know her from, as Esme. Thank you, Patrick. So far, I'm really enjoying the story. I will tell you guys, I got quite a scare at that last scene. I'm just to jump ahead to the very last moments, but that ghost effect that they do on his sister, where she's across the room and we see her behind him when he's on the phone with his dad. He turns around and she's right the fuck in front of him. And then her eyes grow milky and her mouth is open and she begins to turn gray and look I'm getting chills just talking about it. Oh God, you guys, it creeped me out so bad. It really, really did. I hate that, like, every time I watch something like this, I can't walk through my own home anymore without being like, I'm going to open a door and like peek my head around real quick, because I can't just throw open a door anymore. Nope. Somebody will be standing there, so I better get ready for it. Like, I just get completely paranoid about all of my movements. It's like the fucking simple thing of going to get some ibuprofen earlier because my head hurt. And I like opened and closed the fucking medicine cabinet, and I was like, there's gonna be somebody behind me. There was nobody behind me. It was fine. There's somebody there. But I definitely had like this moment of just like, oh God. So, just for those of you who didn't follow the Bly Manor shows, I am a massive crybaby scaredy cat about this stuff. It is pathetic. So I'm just saying that so that you all are ready for it. So this season, and I'm finding this really interesting. So I am assuming that they're going to be doing a series a year about, or every 2 years, about haunted houses using a lot of the same cast. And I'm very curious to see how that goes now that I've like watched the others and I know some of the actors, because there's something that can happen, which I don't know if it's like good or bad, but if you grow really familiar with actors, it can either make you feel like this is familiar and comforting and you enjoy it because you're like, you already recognize people and there's something about that sort of makes you feel almost nostalgic. Or it can make you sort of feel distance from the material because you're so aware, oh, but this person was somebody else in another thing that was very similar to this. So I'm distracted by that all the time. I'm not sure which one it's going to be for me. Like, I feel almost like it's a good thing that Nell is dead already, because the nanny is obviously the most, like, the main character, really, from Bly Manor. So I don't mind her being in the show. It's not like I'm trying to say they shouldn't have cast her again or anything. But I feel like she is the one that would probably trip me up the most in terms of looking familiar and being distracting. So her being sort of... she's clearly not taken out of the narrative because her ghost is here, and I expect her ghost to be around. I have a feeling she's just going to like be a bit of a presence for the remainder of the show. But it certainly, I think, helps to have her be distanced from things a little bit. That said, I'm seeing this as like, okay, we're going to be running into Ghost Nell, but it sort of feels like maybe we're going to be seeing a lot more flashbacks coming up, and so maybe we'll see her as a live person also. We'll see. I just wanted to put it out there that there is the potential for that to be distracting, but I am not distracted by it yet. Let's see, the chat is blowing up. Ashley says I can never look in mirrors after horror movies. That's definitely the one that does it for me. Patrick says I have not seen Bly Manor. The two are unrelated. Am I right? Yes, unrelated. And Ashley says Mike Flanagan, the director, said he was only doing 2. Oh, that's surprising. This feels like such a rich vein that you could keep doing like haunted house stuff, and you can have it be pretty different. So far, what I find interesting about Hill House versus Bly Manor is Hill House being set in present day, because Bly Manor was set in like the 90s or late 80s. It was the early 90s, right? And the fact that it seems as if they're going for a similar family trauma storyline, which makes sense because, as I said in the Bly Manor show, when you really get under the spookiness of most ghost stories, what is there is violent, sad stories. People who are mentally unwell or who have like a break of some kind and commit a horrible crime. Or you have people who are like abandoned and pine away for somebody who never comes back again. Or a woman desperately trying to retrieve her murdered child. Or, you know, like everything that is underneath frightening stories is actually traumatic and terrible. So it makes sense that both of them seem to be centered around something that's like really negatively affected people. we obviously don't know the details yet, but what I'm assuming happened, and this is just obviously like, there's a combo here. So earlier, Ashley asked me if I had read the book. Yes, I covered it for the book club. The book club feed is still up, I'm pretty sure. So if you guys want to go and check that out, it's up there. Don't remember who I covered it with. But I really loved The Haunting of Hill House. Shirley Jackson, it is, I'm pretty sure. It is an unreliable narrator story, which I'm growing to realize are some of my favorites. And it has this sort of ending that feels ambiguous enough, but also decisive enough that you're like, okay, like they didn't say it, but yeah, that's definitely what happened. And I covered it with money. Thank you, Ashley. That book for me was one of the more emotionally affecting horror stories that I've read too. And I'm interested because I don't remember everybody's names super well, but I am assuming that most of the character names in the show are taken from characters in the book, and I'm just not, like, I know that the Dudleys, the couple that runs the estate, are the same. As I said already, Theodora, she goes by Teddy, she is just like a guest, because the premise in the books is that there's a man who's trying to study this house that is reputed to be super haunted. And he calls in a bunch of people to come stay that have had their own psychic experiences and have encountered ghosts or have had weird things happen around them, because he feels that there are certain people who are more drawn to the supernatural or draw the supernatural to them. So he's hoping that by getting a group who is sensitive in this one place that is supposed to be very active, it's going to somehow spark more activity for him to study. And one of the people that he invites is Nellie, really, in the book, I think. And Nellie is the character that is very unreliable, and we see the story through her eyes. And spoilers for the book, for those of you who have not read it, but the basic takeaway is that she isn't super mentally stable when she is invited in the first place. And as she stays longer in this house, it feels as if the house itself is also definitely like sinister, and it preys on her specifically because of the fact that she is fanciful and causes her to begin to have like more of a mental break. And there's a sense that she may have had the mental break anyway, but this house is certainly influencing her, and there's a presence there of some kind. And what's interesting is that there isn't a presence that's distinctive. There isn't a sense of like a particular person haunting the place. It really feels like the house itself is the badness. Like it's something, almost as if you were reading Dresden Files and there's like the confluence of ley lines in certain places that cause like a power surge. There's almost a feeling of that, like the house is positioned in a place and built in such a way that it focuses all this really powerfully negative energy. And so her coming there, it causes her to lose it. And she essentially winds up committing suicide at the end of the book. And there's a bit of a moment where she is just about to die, and she comes back to herself and realizes that she doesn't want to die. What is she doing? But it's too late, and she dies. And that the end of the book is just everybody sort of like standing around like, welp, because so many people have committed suicide on the grounds that it's almost not a surprise. So I am assuming that because of the way things are being structured with the storytelling, that they're going to do something like hinting toward parts of the book. I don't know how much they're going to stay on track with it, but because of how differently this is being told already, I am assuming they're almost going to use the template of like the book having happened as what occurred before the family came to the house themselves. I don't know though. So the mother winds up dead, and the family winds up fleeing the house in the middle of the night in a scene that I thought was incredibly fucking tense, you guys. We don't know exactly what happened. And there is something wrong. Like, when the father comes and wakes up his son in the middle of the night, he is urgently like locking the door, telling him not to open it and to keep quiet. The doorknob is turning really slowly in a way that is suggestive of somebody is clearly trying to get in, but they are not as aggressive about it as you would expect. Like if somebody were genuinely attempting to get in and hurt somebody because they were angry or motivated in a real way, that would feel more urgent. The doorknob would be shaking wildly. There would be like a body pounding against the door. And that's not what's happening. And there's an attitude that the dad has. He knows what's going on. Whatever happened, he saw the start of it and is aware of what he's dealing with in a very like general way. And when he picks his son up and he says, "You keep your eyes closed no matter what." Spoilers, his son does not entirely keep his eyes closed. Okay? Like, you wouldn't, would you? As a kid? I wonder, would you, everybody? If y'all are game to tell me, I'm not entirely sure what I would do. Because personally, I was the type of kid that was very obedient a lot of the time. I respected authority and appreciated guidelines a lot. That's not to say that I never broke the rules. But I feel like the overall attitude the dad has here would scare me enough that I would listen to him and I wouldn't open my eyes. That said, I'm not positive of that. I feel like I would, but I might not. And this kid opens his eyes for a second. You guys, it's bad. You just see this one moment. His dad's running down the hallway, which, by the way, is lined with these fucking, like, life-size statues with this light bouncing off them to make it just look like there's always a ghost, which is really rude, and I don't like it. And whoever designed it that way is just like, get therapy. Seriously, what are you doing? Like, really? Why? What? I like to think that, like, over the years, the fucking Dudleys got those statues imported and put there because they were like, oh, this house is so fucked up, we may as well just lean into it. Like, they weren't originally there, but the Dudleys like to fuck with people. Because I think the Dudleys are a menace. And they are definitely super, super creepy in the book. And we meet Mrs. Dudley at the end of this. Actress, very familiar. Can't put my finger on what I know her from. But while she is incredibly intense in the scene, she is not... In the book, the Dudleys are actively, like, unfriendly to the point of it being like they're one step from literally kicking everybody out at all times. It feels like they're constantly making it really clear they don't want anybody here. They resent having to do this work. And they also have a really, really strict schedule where they don't stay in the house after nightfall. And they don't really, like, talk about the creepiness of the house. It's just taken for granted that, like, you know you're here because this house is creepy. And no, we're not going to talk to you about it because we have a job to do and we have come to an accord with the house. So whatever you decide to do, that's on you. And we'll be here to just provide bare minimum support for that. But we're not going to fucking help you. And we're not going to, like, you know, the Dudleys are almost, it feels like, a symbiotic relationship with the house where they're also malevolent, but they, like, rely on the house to do the heavy lifting for them, and they're just kind of there to soak up the energy that the house leaves behind is sort of the vibe in the book. So I'm curious to see what the Dudleys are like in the show. Because the husband we meet, he hands the key to the eldest sister. And you guys are going to have to feed me names. I'm sorry, because Nell and Luke are the only two I really remember. And Teddy. But he didn't seem like he was as off-putting as he is in the book in that short little scene we get with him. So I'm going to keep my eyes open on that. But back to this. He opens his eyes for a second, and you guys, we see what looks like his mother, maybe, in a long white nightgown, hobbling / scuttling / I can't even think of the word. It looks like she's running, but as if there were sticks tied to each of her limbs that sort of kept her knees from bending and her elbows from it's the kind of run that doesn't quite look like a human being should be doing that. And he just gets that very short glimpse of her. And I found it really funny because his dad is like, don't open your eyes no matter what. But as soon as they get to the top of the stairs, his dad puts him down. And I was like, you maybe want to warn him that you're not going to be completely out of the house by the time, So they get out to the car, and all of his brothers and sisters are already out there. And they're asking, where's Mom? What's happening? Where is she? I thought I saw her upstairs. And their dad says, that's not Mom. I think it's their dad, or maybe it's Nell who says that. But the eldest brother looks up and he sees a silhouette in the window as if she's standing there watching them pull away. And it's, for him, he hasn't actually encountered any of the weird shit the rest of the family has. Now, so he thinks that his dad is just abandoning their mother. And look, I understand that when some shit happens that you don't understand in the moment, nobody's answering your fucking questions, there's no explanation to be had anyway, what is his dad going to say? He doesn't know what happened. Not really. I'm sure he has his ideas, but nobody's going to fucking listen to him. There's only so many rational explanations that you can come up with. And my dad is abandoning my mother right now does make sense in a rational way. But, dude, would he ever have reacted like this if it weren't incredible? And you saw the way she was running. You saw that at least. Let's say, guys, that you lived in this house. Look, the oldest son, what's his name? Steve. Thank you, Candace. Steve saw a ghost. That's right. That's the name of the episode. I should remember that. Steve, buddy, how do you live in this house and not know that some shit went down, from day one? This is the kind of thing that blows my mind. Look, I have never seen a ghost. Full stop. Never saw one. Do I believe ghosts exist? 1,000%. 100,000%. They absolutely do. Too many people see shit. It doesn't make any sense to say ghosts don't exist. Okay, then come up with something. Tell me what that is then. Shut up. You don't know. It's fine. Nobody knows. But just admit that. Okay? Just admit that. So, let's just say that you are somebody who has never encountered something supernatural. You still get a vibe in places, though, don't you? Unless I have to imagine you are so completely cut off from yourself. I have never seen a ghost, but I'll be damned if I haven't been in places where I'm like, oh, there is definitely somebody in this room with me right now. Like, I haven't seen anything. Nothing has happened. I can't point to any evidence of any kind, but you fucking know. You know when that's what's going on. And this kid is so, like, as he gets older, he is in the profession, essentially, of debunking ghosts, which, look, a lot of the time, it probably is garbage. A lot of it probably isn't true. But there's a sense to him of almost wanting to find truth to the stories because it would help explain some of the shit he went through as a kid, and he wants to feel like he isn't being just fed a bunch of lies or surrounded by people who have lost their minds, because it would make him feel better to think this is real and maybe there was something. And I just can't imagine being his age and living in a house that looked like that and not 100% believing immediately anything somebody told me about a ghost in that house. I just can't imagine it. He's like, what, 11? 10? Like, that's prime ghost story times. If you were a kid living there and your little brother and sister were drawing these fucking weirdo screaming mouth little sketches and seeing shit, talking about a bent neck lady. Hi, what do you need to happen? Believe them, dude. Honestly, like, what does it cost you? That's always what it comes down to for me. What does it cost you to, like, believe that these people are telling you their experiences with genuine belief? You may not think they're completely correct, but if they're all seeing the same thing, like, come on, man. So anyway, there's just, like I said, I have not seen one, but there have been more than one time where I have felt a presence in a room with me. And I actually, when I moved into my place in Philly, there was a presence in one particular room consistently in this one corner of the room. And I finally, like, did a sort of dispelling ceremony. Like, I hate to use the word exorcism because it sounds so dramatic, but it's essentially the same thing. And I was like, look, I understand you were here and this is, like, for you, this is your space, but it's not your space anymore. And you really are going to have to find somewhere else to go. And I tried to be as compassionate with it as I could. And it was mostly gone after that. It was always a little bit like uncomfortable in that room, but it was never like it was when we first moved in. And maybe it's psychosomatic. I don't know. Or not psychosomatic, psychological. I don't know. But anyway, so this is my whole thing with him as an adult, is he has decided, first he's like, as we find out, he was writing novels, people weren't buying them. So he had this incredibly awful thing happen when he was a kid. And obviously, when he offers to write about that, publishers are just like leaping for it. And that he gets offered this major advance. But his oldest sister, Shirley, right, guys? Thank you. I think so. She is super upset when she reads the manuscript because it's essentially laying bare what happened from his point of view. Him being the person who doesn't believe any of it, really. And we know from this episode, he's not speaking to his father anymore by the time this all starts, which is wild to me because all his dad does is advocate so hard to, like, shield his children, and his dad is, like, on it. His father, he gets his kids together and gets them the fuck out of the house. He tries to keep them from getting interviewed or put on the stand or anything. When he gets the call from his daughter who's flipping out, he immediately is like, okay, shit's happening. He's not like, are you sure? Are you sure? No. He tells her someplace to go because he can't get to her immediately. And then he gets a bag and packs right away because he believes her. So to see that Steve isn't speaking to his dad anymore when his dad is the one who is, like, there for his children, I'm like, Steve, well then what's your fucking problem? What did he do that has caused this rift between you? Because I can't help it, Steve. I assume it's your fault because he's trying. I don't know what more you want. What more he wants is clearly for him to not buy into this ghost bullshit. But that's like, believing people is really, like, at the base of a good relationship, believing them. Candace says, in my opinion, Steve dislikes Dad because Dad won't give him permission to write it all off as Mom having momentary insanity due to existing whatever and killed herself. Dad won't let him do that and explain anything, so he's mad. All right, so yeah, it's Steve's fault. Like I said, I stand by it. And I also, like, I should have mentioned too, because I was saying how I recognize people from the cast, and the guy who's playing Steve is, first of all, he's super fine, but I think he was in Nashville, and he was in Game of Thrones, and I think he was like I think he was the boyfriend in, oh my God, Orphan Black. So he's been around a minute, but yeah, he pretty. So I'm not mad about it. Anyway, Steve just seems like, you know, he wrote this book, and the way that his sister reacts, I honestly can't imagine a worse person to tell their story than him. If he doesn't believe anybody and he thinks that his mother was mentally ill, it's going to flavor all of his writing and be really ugly to read, I'm sure. And secondly, so let's say your mom was mentally ill, dude. Right? That's fine? To write a, like, tell-all novel about somebody with an illness as if that's, like, an entertainment for people, that's also fucked up, dude. You know? And, like, I understand wanting money. Look, nobody wants money like I want money, kids. I love money. It's great. I'm not mad about wanting an advance. But he's out here acting like he's giving his family a say in the matter when it's very clear he intends to do whatever the fuck he wants. He has no interest in their input. He just gives them copies to sort of, like, prepare them with the illusion of, you have a say in this. They absolutely don't. He's going to do whatever, and it's like his sister Shirley says, if you publish this, you're going to have to know what the cost is. And the cost is that he's not going to fucking, like, have a relationship with them anymore. And in the scene with Shirley, where she has read it and she's protesting, and she's pregnant, by the way, but we don't see her kid later, so I don't know what happened there. But his wife is defending him. And later on, when he calls his wife to warn her that his sister may be headed there because that's where his dad sent her, his wife is very, very unhappy with him. We do not know what she's, like, what has happened, because he asks if he can come by and talk about it, and she says, you know what you would have to say, which is extremely specific. It's not like, oh, we had general marital problems, we just don't see it for each other anymore the way we did. Something very particular happened, and she wants a very particular thing from him. And that's compelling to me. I'm always interested when something falls apart, because mostly relationships fall apart for a myriad of reasons. There's all kinds of issues. But when you can point to a thing and be like, do this thing, and we're fine, that's like, what did you do, dude? You know? Let's see. Candace says, I judged the wife pretty hard here, not gonna lie. Oh, in the scene with Shirley. Because, yeah, the wife tries to be like, oh, it's my family too. And I'm like, bitch, no, go sit somewhere. What are you doing? Don't insert yourself into this. Like, I don't understand the urge that some people have to insert themselves into narratives. Like, and I say this as somebody who can be very self-absorbed. I have a fucking show where I talk by myself for an hour, mostly about my own shit. Okay, so, like, I get being into yourself. I do. But aren't you, like, embarrassed to try and make something about you that is so clearly not? I would be embarrassed to do it in a conversation that was about everyday matters. Never mind an old trauma involving a death. I'm assuming a suicide, but we don't even know that for sure. I would never, like, unless she doesn't fully know what happened when she's having this conversation. I assume she does, though, because he literally wrote a book about it. So how would she not? So yeah, she just needs to, like, go sit down somewhere. And also, I don't, like, again, this is just me, but I could not be with a person that I saw treating their family history this way. It would just feel to me like that's in my cards for our future too. If something were to go sour or something dramatic were to happen, that they have no problem just using that as fodder to make money again at some point. This is like, just for me, it would be a huge waving red flag about the content of the character of this person, and I am not interested. Thank you. So this whole thing is essentially the kind of analog for the character in the books who is going around and finding people to invite to the house. He is involved with this particular woman who, I don't know if she even has, what is her name, guys? But this black woman has come to him, and she is talking about her encounter with her husband's ghost. And it's sort of an interesting thing here. Irene, thank you, Ashley. Irene, her husband died in this really awful way. His car, like, went off a cliff, or, like, but not all the way, and he was trapped upside down with a broken arm in his car for, like, hours, leaning on the horn for somebody to find him. And nobody did, and he died there after hanging upside down for ages. Which is truly, like, knowing that's how your loved one died would just eat you away from the inside. Like, I don't know how you get on with your life after something like that. I truly don't. I would just, you're never the same. You're never the same after something like that. And she tells him this story. Guys, this monologue is like the stuff of dreams. Can you imagine? I don't remember this actress from anything else. I'm not saying that she wasn't in anything else, but I don't know her. If this were my first breakout role and I got this monologue, I would just cry tears of joy. What a juicy fucking monologue. Holy shit. It's so emotional. It's so upsetting. It's so, like, beautiful, and it's in the way that she, like, phrases things, but it's not over the top with, like, purple prose. I just was watching her performance of it too. She's really good at selling it, and oh my god, she's just so good. It's so good. So the whole thing is that she wakes up feeling water dripping on her in the middle of the night, and she looks up and she sees her husband hanging over the bed with water dripping off his hair. And there's, like, it almost looks like blood has pooled in his cheeks, and his face is this purplish color. And he opens his mouth like he's going to scream, and instead the sound of a car horn comes out of his mouth, like when he was just repeatedly leaning on the horn, trying to get somebody's attention. And she says something like, you would think in a situation like that, seeing something like that, that you'd scream. But you're too confused and too, like, stunned. And then she says that the sound of the car horn startled her so badly that she fell out of the bed. And when she did that, it suddenly reminded her that she could scream, because she just sort of forgot. And she starts screaming, and she looks back up, and he's gone. And she's telling the story, and it's just like, oh yeah, that definitely happened. Like, look at her face. That happened. That shit happened. And what he does is go to her house and stay in the room that she's in, or that she was in when that happened, but she says she's never slept in that room since. And has some equipment set up to try and record any events happening. And when he gets to her house, there's a bunch of his books on her bookshelf, and she sort of, you know, sheepishly confesses that she's a fan, and she quotes the Hill House book to him, and he gets this real, like, grimace when she starts to quote it, because obviously he has a lot of baggage about this publication. It's interesting because nobody has asked him if he regrets publishing it, it's clearly cost him a lot in his relationships, but he's also able to carry on with this ghost stuff now and make money off of that, it seems. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. Like, maybe he feels like he's been pigeonholed by it now. I don't know what he was writing before this, if it was horror or not. Like, if it wasn't, then that definitely feels like what's happened. But, I don't know. Based on his personal experiences as a kid, I would not be surprised if he was drawn to writing horror before he did Hill House. So he goes up in the bedroom and stays the night, and a couple things happen. One, water begins to drip on him, and he looks up and realizes that there is a leak in the roof. And two, a car horn, there's like a combo car horn tire screeching outside. And when he runs to the window, he sees that there's a pair of cars that very nearly had a T-bone accident. And there's a post where a stop sign was, but no longer is. So what he tells her is that he thinks that a combination of grief, being perhaps half asleep or perhaps even all asleep, a drip from the ceiling, and the sound of car horns when she's not probably sleeping as well because he isn't in bed with her, all coalesce to create this sort of vision that wasn't an actual haunting, but was nevertheless very real to her. And this is sort of interesting to me because I'm not even mad at his explanation. Her saying, I know what I saw, it's very clear that she feels a bit indignant, like she's being told that this was all in her head. And that's what's so frustrating about ghost stuff, is that, like, it can be all in your head and still be real, I think. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, for example, if in the instances where I was in a room and I felt a presence and I looked around and I didn't see anything, but I definitely was like, no, but there is somebody here. I wouldn't be surprised if there was somebody else in the room who looked around. Maybe they would see something. Different people are going to have a different reaction. And what is that? Mental? Like, it's not that they have better eyesight, like, you know? That said, I also think that half asleep stuff and the kinds of things that can happen when you're like semi-dreaming and something actually happens in reality outside of your conscious mind, they can sort of meld together. Like, I'm sure that you guys have had dreams where there's a noise that's like happening within your dream, and it isn't for like a few minutes that you finally wake up and realize, like, oh my God, my alarm clock's been going off this whole time. That's what the noise was in my dream. And it just, your brain takes external stimulus and folds it into whatever the narrative is that's happening in your mind. So I am not as, like, I believe that she saw what she saw. I also believe that he could be right about it. It's potentially possible. But that said, you know, it doesn't take away from her feeling that her experience was genuine. There's nothing that makes that less genuine except for the idea that that person's spirit was actually there. And that's what I think happens, that people get a little bit like almost insulted by, because they want their loved one to have actually been present. When I say their loved one, I'm talking about specifically instances where people saw a ghost of somebody they knew. I think this is probably true also of, you know, sightings of just random ghostly encounters. But I think with something like this, there's a part of you that wishes that they were around, even if it were in this horrible way. Because she asks, why would I have wanted to see him like that? And he says, because seeing him like that is better than never seeing him again at all. And she doesn't really respond to that, because I think he hits on a bit of truth there, as much as it seems like it wouldn't be true. I think that she knows a bit of her does feel that way. So I'm in a weird place with Steve with this, where it's like, as far as what happened with you as a kid and your ways of coping as an adult, you suck. But in terms of the way that you're handling this and the explanation for it, it does make some sense to me, and I can understand where you're coming from on it. However, what it comes down to in the end is that he is going to write her story. And I didn't realize that was the point of this. I sort of expected this to be like almost like a side gig that he had taken up investigating this stuff. I didn't realize that he was also still writing. And he tells her that he is going to take some liberties, because he always does, but he'll do it in a way that Carl really would have liked, because Carl was a fan of his writing. And, yeah, she's sort of frustrated because at the way he's talking about her husband, she realizes, like, wow, you really didn't see anything, did you? And there's a moment where I realized, like, she thought maybe he was lying this whole time or something, you know? And he admits that he has never seen a ghost. So that's what's so significant about the end of this episode. So we talked a little bit about his older sister Shirley and, you know, the flashback with him writing the book and everything. What we don't really get to is the fact that she runs this funeral home with a man who I don't know if he's a business partner or a husband, but there's like a sort of vibe between the two of them that I think they're in a relationship, although I don't think we ever see them together. I may be wrong about that, though. And her sister, Teddy, is staying with her, and Teddy is perhaps bisexual, but at the very least, she's definitely interested in women. And from what her sister says about the Pussy Parade, I'm leaning towards lesbian. Oh, Theo. Thank you, Ashley. I keep calling her Teddy. I thought she went by Teddy in the books, but no, I must have that wrong. But yeah, Theo, she has an encounter with a woman that she meets at a club, and basically, like, as soon as they're done having sex, she puts on these gloves and kicks the bitch out, is basically what happens. It's very unceremonious. She says something about how she is a bit of a germaphobe, and that is why she wears these gloves. And it's wild because something clearly went down there, but I have no idea what it could be that causes her to wear these. And just the fact that she says something to her sister when she goes outside and has a smoke with her about how this girl had like a pile of issues. And it's like, well, she didn't. She just thought you would be okay with a conversation, and you weren't. So no, that's not her issue. But there's obviously some distancing that she is doing between herself and partners, and also with herself and Nell. She talks with Shirley a bit about how she hasn't talked with Nell since the LA thing. We don't know what that is yet. And that she's still waiting on an apology, and that it's called drawing boundaries, which is something that Shirley could definitely stand to learn more about. And this is really a difficult thing. Boundaries are always so tricky because you can never be totally sure when you're dealing with somebody who has a kind of illness, whether it be mental illness or addiction, as we see with Luke later. You can never be sure if you're drawing a boundary in a way that is healthy for everyone. When you really care about a person, it's very tempting to constantly put yourself second and hope that they are going to be better, get better, whatever that looks like. And as anybody who has dealt with people who have addiction issues knows, it's really difficult because the people who are coping with the issues themselves don't want to be dealing with this garbage either. It's not like they're enjoying themselves, you know? So you feel guilty a lot of the time if you aren't always making concessions or constantly there for them. But you're also a person with your own things going on and potentially your own illnesses that you're coping with and your own traumas. And you have to figure out where to draw the line in a way that's safe and responsible for both people. And it can be awful feeling like you've drawn that line and then you find out that they got worse, something went wrong, because you're never not going to blame yourself in a way for it. You just can't help but do that because it gives us a sense of control to think that we could have done something. And The scene later on with Luke and Steve, I really thought was so well done. Steve comes home. Luke is coming down from his apartment, and it turns out that he broke in and he has stolen an iPad and a camera, and he's like shivering and shaking. And obviously he had been clean and had been in rehab, but now it seems pretty clear that he's using again. It may not be, but it looks like it. And it looks like he's stealing his brother's shit to sell to go get some drugs. And his brother, there's just this sadness to the scene that I think is so poignant. Like, I think there's a moment here that feels as if somebody who has coped with this themselves wrote this scene, because somebody who hasn't might write this a little bit more angry and a little bit more confrontational. And instead, there's this sort of like resignation to it. And this like, I can't come up with a better word than resignation. But the whole way that Steve interacts, and he goes into his wallet and he's like, look, here's $200. I really do need the iPad. You can take the camera. And the whole way that this goes, and his brother coming down and looking him in the eye and saying, I'm sorry. And Steve saying, I know, as he hands over the money. That's what sucks so much about addiction, especially, is they are sorry. They don't want to be doing this. They don't want this any more than you want this. It feels like they're taking advantage of you for something of theirs, like for themselves, but they're taking advantage because there is a compulsion in their body, like they have no control over. And, you know, like you have some control to a point if you're able to get help, but obviously this family is dealing with some fucking issues that are beyond anything that a rehab center would be able to cope with. What are you going to be like? Oh, I have addiction issues because of trauma from ghosts. Like, you know, nobody's going to hear you. So yeah, I thought that scene was so well done. And, he goes upstairs to his fucking prison of an apartment. Can we just talk about this room, you guys? It's like a 1-bedroom. It's pretty big, actually, but there's like nothing in it. And I'm assuming this is because the like split from his wife is pretty recent. That's the vibe I get, is like, this is what he's got for now. Or maybe the place even came furnished and it was just bare minimum stuff. He's still wearing his wedding ring. But the room is like this gray. It's so unattractive and not homey, and just like, it feels like Steve's punishing himself by living here, you know? And he sees his sister standing in the corner, Nell. And it's just awful the way that he talks to her, because it's clear he has nothing but contempt for her as a person. He has no patience with her. He is uninterested in like actually talking to her. And the way that he reacts when his father says Nell was lying, and he like kind of snorts and rolls his eyes and says, shocking, you know, like the overall vibe of him in response to her has this feel to it that makes me think it must have been awful for her to be around him at all when she was alive. You know, I don't know how much they even saw of one another, but if he doesn't like blame her for their mother's death, he blames her for something. He clearly seems to think that she's faking or over dramatic. If there is, like, if he does believe that she's mentally ill, he has no empathy for that at all, you know? And when he comes in, he's like, basically asks her, did you lead Luke here? And what's so interesting, and I told you guys about the scene where the dad like goes and grabs his bag and immediately gets out of bed. I will tell you all, and I'll go now. I'll go look at it. I have the episode up. But you guys, I was watching this by myself at my desk. I've resolved to watch most of these episodes at my desk because watching anything that's filmed this dark on my TV in my living room is really difficult to see. So I'm going to try and watch them at my desk if I can. And so I was at my desk. I had the headphones on, so I had the surround sound very much in my ears. And the scene where the dad is laying on his side in the bed and he feels this arm, like, you know, sliding up and down his side, and he turns over and he sees the lips of his wife, and there's a moment of it seeming like he thinks that he's in the past, or maybe that he's dreaming. And it turns out he is dreaming. Okay, guys, I have it paused. I'm gonna screen share this right now, actually, because I can't do it by myself. I can't even lie to you guys. I'm gonna start. I'm gonna play. I'm so scared. I looked away just in time. I'm gonna rewind a little bit. I looked away just in time when I was watching it the first time because I knew something was going to happen. And so I'm bracing myself here. He turns over, he sees her lips, and then what? Ugh! 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 I hate it. Ugh. So anyway, that's what happens when he gets the call from his daughter and freaks out and starts packing and immediately runs out to the car. Later on, we see the sister going dancing down the hallways of this fucking mansion. Can we talk about this scene where she's dancing down the hallways? Because y'all, this moment, I just have to point out that this bitch evidently like packed a dress that was exactly perfect for dancing around ghostly like in this old house. I don't know if we're going to like find out that she just wore this kind of dress all the time. I don't think so. But I really have to admire a bitch who dresses for the occasion, because this would not have the same effect if she were in fucking trainers and a pair of jeans. Like, let's be honest. But yeah, she's dancing around, and there's a pause as we go from like each of the siblings, and the clock on all of the nightstands says like 3:02. And as one, they all wake up at around the same moment, like grabbing at their throat, because clearly she hung herself at this time, which I'm assuming is what happened to their mother. I'm assuming that their mother killed herself that same way. And later on, Dad finds out that she has died, and he calls Steve. And we get this scene, you guys. I'm going to go to Steve. I'm going to go to Steve so that you guys can all watch this part with me also, because it's so, so scary. I'm doing it. Ugh. Yeah, but look at him. Woke everybody up, made Dad get on a plane. You got us all listening. What do you want? And he's so fucking shitty about it, you know? Like, even if you think that it is mental illness and whatever she's saying happened didn't actually happen, man, have a little fucking compassion, dude. Sincerely. So, yeah, this is when he gets the call, and it's just done so well, you guys, because, like, look, there's a point where he turns his back to her, but you can still see her over his shoulder as he's realizing that she's dead. And it's so effective, because that fools us into thinking either she's going to disappear or whatever, so that when he does in fact turn around and she's right fucking there, it's so much scarier, you guys. Look at her face. Look at her face. Look at her face. What is this? Oh, I hate it. It feels like she's trying to yell mom, but it just... Oh, I hate it. Oh, it's so awful. And it just ends with his dad, because Steve falls on his ass. Thank God for that. And his dad is just on the phone going, "Are you there? Steve? Steve, are you there?" And that is the end of the episode. And yeah, guys, I am... Bly Manor was definitely scary, but this for me was the scariest thing out of like everything in Bly Manor. I feel like this was scarier. I think part of it is it being set in present day, the way that it is, it makes it feel much more immediate, you know? Oh God, you guys, it's a lot. Let's see. Just making sure I'm not missing anything major in the commentary. Candace says, the first time I saw it, I thought Luke was so embarrassed and he protested in such a way that meant he knew Steve wouldn't believe him. He tried anyway, but he knew. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Candace, because he says it's not what you think. And all Steve says is good. But Luke doesn't try to give him an explanation. And reminder, the reason Nell was calling everybody initially was not because she was like telling them, I'm going back to the house. She calls to tell them all something's going on with Luke and she's worried about him. And when she leaves the message, I think for Shirley, she says something like, it's all very mixed up and hard to explain. So I don't think it's an accident that Luke's doing whatever it is and has left rehab without a word. Something, and can we talk about the fact that Steve calls rehab to find out if Luke's okay? They tell him that he isn't there. And then he calls Nell and straight up fucking lies to her about how Luke is doing. Like, you are trying to act as if she's overreacting and dramatic and emotional about shit, but you're lying to her face, dude. Like, she obviously is correct, so you're being all super rational and lying. You're doing the shit you're accusing her of, man. So how about you get a grip and shut the fuck up? That's all I'm saying. Anyway. I'm just very irritated, Steve. You're making me very angry. But yeah, so that's the end of the episode. So I have one booked every day that I do Spoil Me's for the next 10 days. I think is the season 10 episodes long, Candace? I feel like you said it was. So yeah, it is going to be a straight shot through the whole series because Candace pre-booked the series. So Candace says maybe 8. Okay. That might actually be right. I feel like I assumed that Bly Manor was 10 episodes also, and it wasn't. Patrick says 10. Okay. Anyway, that is going to be what we do next time too. So guys, come and join me on Friday. I will do another screen share thing of scary moments so that you guys can suffer with me. Oh God, I'm so worried about it. Ugh. At least I'm watching during the day. That helps. All right, guys. Thank you all again. Thank you, Candace. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.